It's a cool 23 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogunyusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Well, it's 27 degrees here in Lagos, Nigeria, but guess what? It's still quite chilly where it is, and as Maupe might agree, some people are still saving up on the electricity. Anyway, welcome to this beautiful day. Today is the 8th day in the month of September 2025. Again, welcome to the show.
Well, Ayo, I can tell you that a lot of Nigerians were wondering what was going to happen this Monday. It's a Monday when a lot of students are going back to school, so the roads are a little busy, but at the same time, we're also hearing reports of a planned strike, a planned protest of some sort over an industrial action. Initially, it had been in the education sector where talks are still ongoing, but right now, as the National Union of Petroleum Natural Gas Workers are threatening to call a full strike if the federal government does not call the management of Dangote refineries to order. And what is their grouse? Their grouse is that the Dangote refineries is not permitting its drivers who are going to be trucking CNG across different parts of the country to join their union. They say it is a fundamental human right that these workers be allowed to unionize, and that in the event that these workers are not allowed to unionize, they are going to call for a showdown with the federal government if the federal government does not enforce the rights of these workers to unionize as enshrined in both local and international laws. So a lot of people are wondering what will happen today. Will Nupeng eventually make good its threat and call a strike, or will reason prevail and, let everyone be able to, get their product? Because whenever it is, we all know that whenever it is that Nupeng calls a strike, the effects can be quite disruptive. A lot of people are, we all begin to have palpitations as to how you're going to get your next petrol or CNG supply, as the case might be. So people are a little nervous and hoping that good reason will prevail. The children have only just started school. School runs have just started. The roads are going to get busier. Traffic is going to get heavier. Well, Ayo, I do not know if you are as anxious as I am to see the end, what exactly will be the end to this particular situation.
Where it was to ask, wait a minute, so while it is a right or whatever, it will, if what we are hearing is what it is, will that organization be the first to disallow unionism in their organization? Well, there are many that are reported and a good number of others that are not reported. Whether or not it is a fundamental right on their part, I guess is another thing. If, for instance, an organization says, look, these are my terms. You cannot join the union. If you want to work here, fine. If you don't want to work here, then fine. I don't know, whether that is against any law or not. I'm just looking at the certain structures that any organization can put up to ensure that their businesses are not disrupted. That said, we'll also remember, Malque, that this same Dangote we're talking about had imported quite a number of CNG trucks. 4,000 were here, and a few of them have arrived in the country. Perhaps this is one of the things that the organization has seen. We spent $20 billion to put up this refinery, and some disruptive strikes here and there may not allow us to recoup our resources. Now that the Nupeng is asking that the federal government should intervene, I'm looking to how that mediation is going to happen, because it can only be a mediation. No one can be compelled to do anything in it, to the best of my knowledge. So I'm gonna wait to see how it is going to work, because as you said, it can be extremely disruptive, not just for any organization, but for the entire economy, because hey, we all know how dependent we are on energy. So it's a function of perspectives here and there, and we're just waiting for how the federal government is going to handle this, because it'll be difficult to imagine that on the one hand, there is an organization, a private organization that is trying to do business in Nigeria, the government wants to see it prosper so as to interest other people to come into the country and invest. On the other hand is the working condition, the living standards of the people and all of that. It's a matter of time, and I think it's just one of those things that we have to wait and see how it evolves.
Big questions, really. The question will be, whose interest will it be if workers are not allowed to unionize? And what exactly will be the advantages and disadvantages? And who exactly will be holding the short end of the stick? Should the workers not be allowed to unionize, or should they be allowed to unionize? I mean, these are very, very, you cannot have 4,000 workers and not say that if for any reason Nupeng Nupeng as a union will want to overlook that number of people not joining a union. It's not a small company. So we'll wait and see to see eventually where the pendulum swings in this regard, Ayo. But energy is at the heart of what it is that we're talking about this morning. It's also forming a key part of our discussion, even though it's not in the way that we know it. We're looking at the supply of electricity to a key sector of our economy. There have been times when we've heard very awkward and very unpleasant stories of how in the middle of a surgery, electricity goes off and there is no generator, or sometimes, the generator was on, there's no diesel, or, university teaching hospitals are without electricity because they cannot afford the electricity being given to them, band A electricity, and it's so expensive, etc. We've seen all of these scandalous situations, and there are questions as to what exactly will be the new funding model for power in our health sector, not just government institutions, because we've also seen private health institutions cry out to say, look, this electricity being given to us, we cannot afford it. On the business model that we currently have, we cannot afford it. Well, we have someone here this morning who is also looking at these questions and perhaps also trying to find answers to them. We're joined by no less than the Minister of State for Health, Dr. Isiaq Salako. Dr. Salako, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much, Makwe, and it's nice to see you again.
It's good to see you too. I do not know if you have any comments on this Dangote and Nupeng workers, but if you do not have, at least we're talking about the health sector right now. We're looking at what is happening with electricity and the complaints that we've heard so far, and what innovation is coming into that particular sector to see how we can solve the problems we have there with regards to energy.
Well, once again, thank you very much. And also good morning to Ayo and to all Nigerians who are listening. On this Nupeng, Dangote, imbroglio as it is, my comment is to appeal for both parties to allow reason to prevail. The ordinary Nigerian must be at the center of the discussion. Like you have rightly observed, any strike by Nupeng will certainly disrupt a lot of things, economic activities, social activities. So we don't want a strike. So I would just appeal that a balance needs to be reached. Of course, Dangote is playing a very important role in the economy, trying to improve our domestic capacities and so on and so forth. And this is something that the government has also been promoting. Of course, there's also the right to associate and unionize, but that must be balanced so that it does not affect the business model that Dangote is trying to push. Of course, a strike by Nupeng will also obviously affect the health sector because as it is today, our hospitals are 65 to 80% dependent on diesel generators, petrol generators, and so on and so forth. So if there's a strike, it will also have an adverse effect on the health sector, and we obviously don't want that. Now,
that's remarkable. I mean, you just said that 65 to 80% of the health sector is run on diesel. That's a significant number.
Very high.
Are you looking at hospitals or facilities with the federal government, or is that a mix, federal, state, and private institutions?
Well, we do not have what I would call a total data outlook or look of all what is going on. We have some what I'll call rapid assessment that has been done, some small surveys. As an example, we know that at the primary healthcare level, about 40% of primary healthcare centers are not electrified based on a survey that was done in 2022, I think. We also know that in the private sector, a lot of hospitals, based on a survey that was done recently, that between 5 to 20 million per month is spent to buy diesel by private hospitals. And in the federal tertiary health institutions, we carried out, on the average, our hospitals spend between 30 to 120 million per month to power the hospitals.
30 to 120 million?
Yes, sometimes more than that. So just an average.
And federal institutions?
Federal tertiary health institutions, yes. That's because when I resumed as the Minister of State for Health in the ministry, one of the first things I did was to try and have a better picture of what is going on at the service level. So I selected at least 5 hospitals in each geopolitical zone that I visited to interact with the workers and the leadership. And what is coming out is that a lot of them, in fact, I can tell you that in some cases, about 50% of their operating expenses is used to buy diesel on a monthly basis. So it is something that is not sustainable. It's something that we really must look at a solution to address it. And that is why when I finished my assessment, I decided that this is one area that I want us to focus on, and I put together a technical committee to look at the strong recommendation of that technical committee is for us to have a national dialogue where we bring every party together, private sector, public sector, experts, people, partners, development partners, NGOs, people who can mobilize resources, and so on and so forth. And that dialogue is happening for the first time tomorrow and next tomorrow on the 9th and 10th at the Abuja Continental Hotel, Ladikwali Hall.
We're going to charge you for adverts, Honorable Minister.
No problem. I know that channel is strong in doing public good, but no problem.
Well, indeed, that conversation will certainly be one to follow. And we've been seeing that even within federal institutions, there have been conversations and even sometimes a shift, a radical shift. For instance, we just woke up one day and we heard that the State House was going to spend about 10 billion to move to alternative sources of energy. And people were wondering, what's going on? Even the presidency is shifting to solar. I'm sure that there must have been a discussion, even though there was no expatiation on why that was necessary. But if we're to go by what is already happening in many Nigerian households, and maybe the reason was not far-fetched with why the presidency or the State House was moving to alternative sources of energy. Only recently, I was privileged to visit the State House Clinic, and I found out that the car park was lined with panels.
Yeah,
it was saying, solar panels, and it was saying that they also moved to alternative energy. And I'm wondering, do we have we been able to find, will I say, examples, or will I say experiments to see what exactly the alternatives could be for us to be able to reduce the energy consumption? Because really, 5 to 20 million for regular hospitals, 30 to 120 million naira on energy alone is quite significant for our health institutions. So do we have any example? I'm trying to look for the word they normally use, like
the best practice.
Best practice, but like an example.
Like a pilot.
Like a pilot, exactly.
Right. Okay.
Where we have experimented what exactly could be possible, and an example that we can now replicate all over the country.
Yes, there are a few things going on, really. At the federal level, for example, the teaching hospital in Maiduguri is run purely on solar now. And they have so much that they can also give to neighboring communities to power their homes.
They have so much electricity they can give to
neighboring communities to power their homes. And that is solely.
How much are they generating?
I think they're generating in the neighborhood of about up to 10 megawatts. In the neighborhood of, I don't know the exact
solar?
Figure. Yes, by solar. And so they are, and also in the private sector, quite a number of people are already doing it. In Abuja here, I think there are a few smaller hospitals too, they are doing it. But what has also come out is that this approach to alternative energy is not properly frameworked and properly guided. It's being done in a haphazard manner as it is. As Minister of State, I've had a lot of private sector people approaching me saying that they want to do solarization of hospitals. And when I look at the policy environment, the guidelines, the framework that we have, there's no robust guideline that can properly protect the interests of government, the interest of the hospital, the interest of the ordinary patient. And it is important that at the start like this, we think very seriously about that and put that into existence. And that is also one of the main reasons why we're doing this. Of course, we also need to think about the implications of solarization. There are other implications. For example, there have been reports of fire outbreaks where you cite your solar panels is important. Some people don't know. We also need to think about the environmental impact of it, talking about my experience as Minister of State for Environment, So all these also need to be properly brought on board. But more importantly, the pace, government is doing a lot, no doubt, but can government funding move at the right pace to be able to properly put in place a robust solarization project across all our hospitals? We think the answer is no. So it is also therefore important to look for partners, private sector funding. But we also know that in getting private sector funding, we cannot be looking at the typical kind of funding to achieve this. So we need to look for how do we get social impact funders who can look more at the social good rather at the profit part of it. So these are part of the conversation we're going to be having going from tomorrow to see how we can properly framework, how at a national level we can agree, local governments, state governments, the federal government, the private sector, and everybody is participating, partners, and so on and so forth.
Will the Rural Electrification Agency be there?
Yes, the Rural Electrification. This is a conversation that we're putting together in partnership with the Ministry of Power. The Minister of Power is going to be there. The Rural Electrification Agency, DG of Rural Electrification is participating. In fact, a representative of Rural Electrification Agency is part of the technical committee that I put together. And we also have quite a number of across government participation and also the private sector.
Because I'm a little curious, if for instance, I mean, as I said, nobody had the conversation with, or maybe that conversation was heard and I did not hear it, as to, whether we really can justify, for instance, I do not know how much the University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital electrified its entire environment for, solarized its entire environment for. But if we're to go with what we know with the State House, and as much as 10 billion naira was spent, we have to ask questions as to whether the things that have now been installed will not require maintenance for as long. I mean, if we're to look at return on investment, so to speak, the ROI, how long will it take will it really make sense on the long run? Because we know that initial investments into alternative power can be pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And you have also made reference to it. So we need to be sure that, whatever pilot scheme we have in place or whatever it is we're using as our model, that over the years, we really can justify what it is that we're putting in the first instance, that, it certainly will make sense on the long run, not by speculation, but really by something that has been tried and tested in this instance. Do we have such example?
Well, the whole essence of this conversation is also to be able to have that robust discussion around. We have very good examples from some countries outside Nigeria, in the African continent. As an example, in Senegal, we have very good examples of efforts that have been able to support the solarization agenda within the health sector. And even some patchy experience is also on in Nigeria. Yes, the initial investment, like you said, is usually very high, but experience has also shown that if you're able to structure the funding very well, hybrid investment, funding model, you can also, on the ultimate, as an example, I can even cite myself as an example. In my house in Abuja, I don't use generator. If there is no power supply from the national grid, I use solar. And since I started living in that house in the over 2 years, I do not have to have any problem with generator repairer. I have to have any problem with my gate man in terms of buying diesel and also. And I say that if I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, I must have recovered the costs that I used to do that solar in 2 years. So I think that yes, getting the initial investment may be huge, but it's something that I believe is worth investing in. But government funding may not be available to be able to do it at scale, and that is why we're looking for other partners that can support the fund. And we have quite a number of people who have come forward, but we just want to be able to get it properly frameworked in such a manner that we can deliver it to the best interest of Nigerians.
That's very important because, some people also say that included perhaps in this cost of electricity we're looking at, we have not also factored in the cost of corruption, sadly. Yeah. And that maybe if we were to look critically at it, we have to be sure that really it will make more sense for us to be on these alternative sources than even, buying diesel or being on AEDC or PHCN or whatever, government power supply, so to speak. But let me go to Lagos now because I'm sure Ayo has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Markwe. One of the things that I want to, ask about concerns the first conversation we were having. We've talked about one aspect of which is that of power sector. We also understand that there is a threat by some workers in the health sector to also go on strike with some ultimatum. Can you confirm that, Honorable Minister?
Yes, the National Association of Resident Doctors have issued an ultimatum, but I think with the level of conversation that is ongoing, we had a meeting on Thursday, and we agreed that what they are actually asking for is the payment of outstanding from their residency training allowance. The federal government provides some kind of grants for resident doctors to be able to do the exams, the postgraduate exam, whether the national or West Africa. And about 40% of that for 2025 still outstanding. And that is really the main issue of the grounds of the resident doctors. But we are having a discussion on that, and I believe very strongly that we are going to avert any strike on that.
Is that an assurance that before the September 10 ultimatum, the issues will be resolved and there will be no strike?
That is my hope, and that is what we are working towards.
All right, Honorable Minister, there are a number of other issues, several other issues, that would disturb one. It's one other thing along that line, because we really can't afford any strike anywhere, particularly with this new strain of the Ebola virus that we have heard about. What can you tell us about that, Honorable Minister? Is there a cause for concern, or should we just still have our eyes, we can go to sleep with our 2 eyes closed?
Well, there is always a cause for concern, I must say, because the world is now a village. Technology has made it so easy for people to move from one end of the world to another end in less than 24 hours. So what is happening in far away Australia can easily come to Nigeria if we go to sleep. So our regulatory authorities, particularly the Center for Disease Control in Nigeria, cannot afford to go to sleep at any point in time. And I know that that organization continue to do surveillance, continue to make preparation for response, continue to carry out activities to prevent, to deploy commodities, put them on standby in areas that may be at risk so that response can be fast if there's an outbreak. That we continuously do. But specifically talking about Ebola, there has not been any reports in our country, but we continue to do robust surveillance to ensure that we prevent it, and if it should happen, we're able to respond very quickly to not so that it doesn't spread widely.
Honorable Minister, it will be good for us to know what those plans are, because I remember in 2014 was the Fashola government in place in Lagos at the time, and we understand that in collaboration with the federal government, there were some measures put in place by the Lagos state government at the time to ensure that, one, it didn't get in, and if it did get in, there are measures put in place to ensure that all the contact tracing, all measures are put in place to ensure that there isn't anything that blows out of proportion. Are there such plans now? I know you don't want to cause a stir, you don't want people to panic, but at the same time, it'll be good to know, because Nigeria is a new bride, so to speak, for investors. But then that also comes with such risks, don't they?
Well, what we have currently is that there are really routine mechanisms that are in place. Diseases are routinely reported, outbreaks there, to the health authorities at the local, and which comes to the state and to the federal levels, and there's a data platform where this is gathered on a quarterly and monthly and weekly basis. We also have at each state an emergency operations center where they are also able to meet on a periodic basis to evaluate and look at some of the reports that are coming from the field. And we have our monitoring staff on the field at the local level who are able to report outbreak, an unusual outbreak in their neighborhood, in their center. And all this can serve as the information that feeds into the national platform that can trigger a more intense look. If there's unusual report, for example, of a fever-like outbreak somewhere, and that is captured and sent to us, then that triggers a more intense look at what is going on. And then if it's discovered that it's not something that is explainable, then you can then expand the activities of how to properly identify what is going on in that place. So that's the kind of thing that goes on routinely, every day, 24/7. That is going on. And it is when there's a trigger that we deploy more elaborate surveillance and detection mechanism to be able to see what is happening.
So can I just ask you then, I mean, tomorrow as you have this conversation of yours, what are you hoping will come out of it?
First, we need to do proper understanding of the environment and how that impacts on the health sector. We like to also look at some best practices that has happened in other climes, including outside Nigeria, so that those best practices can also be discussed. We want to look at the end of the day, also come up with a compact that will be like our guiding principle that will take us on the journey, and also be able to put together a cross-cutting mechanism that will monitor the deployment of alternative energy in the health sector. A mechanism that involves the power sector, that involves the health sector, and also brings in the private sector, so that these things is better managed and better frameworked in a manner that it serves the best interest of Nigerians. So we hope that at the end of the 2 days conversation, we will be able to come out with that compact, and that compact will be like our commitment as a federal government, the commitment of the state government, the commitment of the local government, of the private sector, partners, into ensuring that we follow a defined path. And we also create a central data set for correlation of what is going on within the electricity sector in our hospitals.
Well, Honorable Minister, we certainly will follow up with you on this conversation after you've had it, and especially as you go into implementation. But we have to thank you very much for speaking with us this morning on Sunrise Daily. Dr. Ishaq Salako is the Minister of State for Health. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we'll take a break at this time. When we come back, we will be taking a look at a number of other developing issues, particularly in the world of politics. Please stay with us. Well, indeed, we're changing gears to politics now, and we're joined by Chief Dele Momodu, who is a former presidential aspirant on the platform of the PDP, but I think, Chief, we can confirm now that you've since joined the ADC, haven't you?
Well, it's a coalition of different political parties, and I resigned from PDP because I saw that we had reached a kind of cul-de-sac, so I am joining ADC.
Have you resigned your membership of the PDP, though?
Oh, since I was even I think I was on channels, been on different platforms, and yeah, I resigned since.
Yeah,
we could see that PDP has been completely hijacked by agents of the ruling party ADC, who insist on staying in PDP while working for APC. It's a kind of anomaly, but it's okay. I mean, if I don't agree with my party, the honorable thing to do is to resign. And that's what I did.
But do you still monitor development within the PDP? Because you have said, and that's what a lot of people are saying, that this is supposed to be a coalition of people from different parties. It could also be very possible that you'll have members of the ADC or people who will be working for the ADC within the PDP. Is that also a possibility?
Of course. Apart from being a part-time politician, I am a journalist. I am a reporter, and I'll be a reporter for the rest of my life. So I monitor events in PDP and in other political parties, and I'm almost certain that PDP will not be able to rescue itself from the agents of the ruling party. And that's why I left. I cannot in good conscience continue to be in PDP while I'm working for a coalition or any other party. Anyone who knows me and knows my trajectory will remember that I contested the presidential election in 2011 on the platform of the National Conscience Party. And I came to National Conscience Party from Labour when I realized that Labour was not interested in contesting the presidency at that time. So I resigned honorably, and then I moved to the National Conscience Party. And I learned a lesson from it. Of course, I got about 26,000 votes nationwide, and I feel very, very privileged to have been a presidential candidate in Africa's biggest country, Nigeria. So the lesson I learned from it was that it would be difficult for a fringe political party to win a presidential election. That was why, and I wasn't satisfied with the way Buhari's APC was going. So I decided to join the PDP so that I could have a bigger platform. Of course, in 2022, we had our primary, and I scored 0 because I couldn't match the billionaires who contested at that time. But the promise was that whoever our candidate was, we will support. So I supported Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and I later became the Director of Strategic Communications for the Atiku Okowa presidential campaign at the time. So here I am again. PDP is at the dead end. Some people are desperate. They don't want to kill it, but they want to keep it in ICU for whatever purpose in the future. So that is why they have refused to leave. Everybody is just now using PDP as a cadaver room, which is a place where you keep bodies that are dead, or if not dead, then you keep them in the ICU. So it's either of the two. It's a shame, but I've left.
Okay, well, I did ask you if you were following developments there, and it was for a reason. I was asking because we've seen quite a number of developments within the PDP, it would seem, to try and, get out of the doldrums where it's found itself. I mean, first and foremost, it's not shied away from this issue of zoning, which it would seem will be a very strong part of the 2027 elections. It's since zoned its presidential ticket to the southern part of the country, while the national chairmanship is now to the northern part of the country. Some people say it's too late. But then we also know that this will certainly be, or this could be a sentiment in the upcoming elections in 2027. With your defection to the African Democratic Congress and the intention of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to run for the 2027 elections, how big do you think that is a miscalculation, or do you think that zoning itself would not really matter where we currently are, as some people are currently arguing?
Well, let me start from the rear. I don't think ADC has promised to give automatic tickets to anyone, including Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. If you know him, he's a consummate Democrat who will go through the whole gamut of, primaries, if there are primaries, if there are consensus, but he's not a sole candidate of ADC. That's number one. Number two is that there is nothing in the Nigerian constitution that stops anyone, whether you are a northerner or a southerner, from contesting. And this so-called sentiment is a result and a reward of blackmail from some people who want to deliberately keep all other parties down, because they know that if you zone all other parties to the south in the presidency, none of them will be able to beat Asiwaju. It is very clear to me about that. Once you keep all parties and you say, come and compete, people are going to tell you that, oh, Asiwaju is already our president, so why are we looking for another president? So that is the strategy. And that is why any right-thinking political party should throw its doors open, which was what we did in PDP the last time. Now they are blaming some people for it, which is a lie. We all agreed, and those who took that decision included a member of the G5 who was on the zoning committee. They threw it open. That's why all of us were able to buy that form, because they know that gentleman's agreement in a political party cannot override the constitution of a country. The strategy of every contestant is, how do I win? Why did Asiwaju decide to do a Muslim ticket, despite protests and protestations from people? It was because for him, it was a strategy to win the election. It was not the best decision to have a Muslim ticket. I won't be surprised if they repeat a Muslim ticket again in 2027. So people are looking for every strategy to win election. And once it is not unconstitutional, emphasis on that. I'm surprised that a lot of people argue about North-South. Nobody's talking about experience. Nobody's talking about exposure. Nobody's talking about competence. And all we're just talking is where you come from. Look, an election is an examination every 4 years in Nigeria. And there is nothing more ridiculous than saying a pupil or a student must be promoted by fire, by force, whether he has performed well or he has failed. That is the danger I see in Nigeria. Everybody is just talking north-south. That's number one. Number two, since when have we practiced 8-year rotation in Nigeria? We started this democracy in 1999 after the military 8-year rotation in Nigeria. We started this democracy in 1999 after the military 8-year rotation. I think there is a glitch somewhere. We started this democracy in 1999 after the military 8-year rotation. I think there is a glitch somewhere. We started this democracy in 1999.
Well, if you can hear me, Otumba, I would like to go to a totally different sphere of conversation. It also still has to do with governance, because I know how passionate you have been about that one. You put out a statement on X about a few days ago concerning your visits to the brand new Olubadan of Ibadan, as you put it, on X, and of course, former governor of Oyo State. First of all, tell us, how did it feel seeing your friend occupy that seat in Oyo State?
Well, Baba, There is a kind of echoing. I don't know where it's coming from. If you can hear me,
Yes,
hello? Hello?
we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Yes. So, Baba Ladoja, Chief Rashid, Adewolu Ladoja, now the Olubadan of Ibadan land. I've known, I'm sure, for about 30 years or thereabout. And we were together during my exile years in London. We used to go to him when we were starting Ovation. He was very impressed with our decision to set up, Africa's biggest celebrity magazine at the time. We didn't know that a day would come when social media would play a prominent role in our work. And he had waited patiently. If you know the system in Ibadan, it's a very unique system, which it takes a long time for anybody to be king. And once a king is appointed, they already know who the next king will be. So it avoids the bitter acrimony, and confusion that you find in some places, which at the end of the day will result in litigations upon litigations. So he had waited patiently. He's been a very successful politician, a very accomplished businessman. And so he waited patiently. In fact, he got to a stage where people say, will this man ever become a king, at this rate, because of the system of picking a king in Ibadan. And eventually, he got it. I told him when I visited him that Baba, slow and steady wins the race. You've shown, a kind of tenacity, and he's looked after himself. If you see him, he was able to spring up and we took pictures together, and I was very happy. And we discussed with a sense of nostalgia how we used to go and eat Chinese that time in St. John's Wood. And I told him if he still likes Chinese, and he said, well, he hasn't found a good one in Ibadan. So for me, I'm very excited for him that today is the new Olubadan. And he's looking forward to a very peaceful and successful reign.
And that takes me to the question, my next question of his role. Well, I know that you may have shared notes on politics, being, as you said, an accomplished politician himself. Perhaps that's a conversation for another time. But I'm a little concerned about the role of traditional rulers in our country. I know that they play quite some significant role, but it would seem like their roles are more ceremonial than functional these days. Back then, they were the custodians of culture and tradition. They ensured that we abided by the things that we were supposed to abide by. The traditions of the people, our way of lives are protected by them and all. But then with the advent of pop culture and globalization, it would seem like some of those functions are being eroded. So making their role as custodians of culture more ceremonial than functional these days. There are bigger conversations about that, and I know that you being someone with that sphere of influence, you might be able to give some perspectives. What challenges do traditional institutions face in the country? Do you see any way that we can come on top of it? If the UK can still sustain its traditional, if I can use the term, for its monarchical system and democracy, is there a way for us to do that?
Of course, there is a way, but the political will is not there. You asked about what is the challenge. The challenge is simple and straightforward. Constitution. The Constitution of Nigeria does not give any importance or relevance, so to say, to our monarchs. A local government chairman can wake up tomorrow and tell the Oni of Ife or the Sultan of Sokoto or the Emir of Kano that you cannot step out of your palace and nothing would happen. Because the Constitution puts them under the control of politicians. And politicians will do whatever is favorable to them. Look at Kano. Today we have 2 emirs practically in Kano. I'm sure it's not the wish of the people of Kano. They would love to have a king and know who exactly. But now, politicians have divided Kano into 2. Even at the time, they divided it into more parts than 2, where you now have to send kings to different, chiefdoms and all that. So until we go back to those days, the first black governor in Africa and in Nigeria was Baba Adesoji, Sir Adesoji Tadeni Awo Aderemi, the Oni of Ife, from 1930 to 1980. He was the first governor. He was very prominent, but that was under a parliamentary system. The system that we have now is presidential, American in nature. And Nigerian politicians want to practice capitalism without capital. That's why everything is in disarray. So until you are able to find a leader who is able to say, okay, we need to restructure and change these things to how it used to be. Look at even the issue of insecurity. In those days, if I remember, if they knew that somebody in the township was an armed robber or a fraudster, they will invade his house and put dirty things in front of the house to mark out the place as a place for bad people. Today, the traditional institutions don't have such power. So even if they identify that somebody is a thief and that person is prominent in a ruling party, nobody can touch him. So this is the issue. So the major challenge is that until we empower our kings to be more relevant, to be more influential, they are the custodians of culture, of tradition. They are the ones who know everybody in their townships, in their villages. But today, they are practically totally irrelevant.
Perhaps by tradition or by our way of life, there are expectations of them. Example is when, and I'm sure someone who follows the news, you would remember a time when at the visit of traditional rulers to the president told the traditional rulers who came to see him, call your governors to order, call them to sit with them, insists that they make lives relevant to people. Talk to the governors because they get more resources now, and he would like for the people to feel that there is more coming to the states through the influence of the traditional rulers on their governors. Perhaps that is the expectation, but now is that you think that is just that can't work? It's not strong enough.
Pure semantics. How do you call a man who signed your letter of appointment? It's like you today calling my brother, Dr. John Momo, and saying, look, I hear my channel, the channels is making more money and I want some of it. Or I want to know what you are doing with it. No, it's the board that can do that. And the traditional institutions today are totally, absolutely controlled by these governors. They are the ones who will sign. In fact, for you to become a king now, you have to go and lobby. Almost everything in Nigeria now is under the whims and caprices of the governors or the federal government. Look at even universities, vice chancellors. No university today can pick its own vice chancellor and be sure that it will be ratified by government. So everything has become political. And until we restructure that system and makes it possible for the best to be in front. When we were growing up, that was the way it was. We lived with it and we were able to challenge our leaders. Today, just go on X or Facebook or Instagram and criticize any government. You will find trolls coming after you. In fact, in the next 2 minutes, so many people descend on you, abuse your grandfather and everybody, because that's what they are paid to do. So nowadays, that independence of opinion, I'm in my library, sitting in my library here, and I keep reading the books of those days. Yesterday, I was on Google, and I saw something about Wole Soyinka in 1965, storming a radio station. And he changed the broadcast we were going to make because he did not let anybody try it today. you will end up in the gulag immediately. And you may never come out of it. You'll be labeled a terrorist. So those days are gone when people can protest. So a king today, if a king criticizes government today, I can bet my life that before the end of the day, they are likely to remove that king. So you can't blame anybody for it. We've all accepted it as a norm. And for how long it will be, I have no idea.
I was just going to ask you very quickly, because you've spoken about the role of traditional rulers, and because you've spoken about the role of traditional rulers and how it is that they're not recognizing the constitution, and local government chairmen are more powerful, even though their stools are steeped in ancestry. I'm a little curious as to what your take was on that face-off between the Oni of Ife and the Alaafin of Oyo. I don't know how you felt about it.
Well, I posted a couple of stories about it. I am very close to the Oni. I was born in Ile-Ife in 1960, and I've witnessed at least 3, from Adesoji Aderemi to Oba Kwadeshijo Adeolubushi II, and now to our Ojaja II, Obadeye Yenito Ogunwusi. So I know about Ife tradition. I know about Yoruba culture. I studied Yoruba for my first degree. I have a bachelor's degree in Yoruba from the then University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University. And I've always known that Ife is rated as the origin, the source of civilization. So every Yoruba man who does not want to distort history knows that at some point we all came from Ife. That is what is contained in the oral tradition of our people, in the folklore and everything. But everybody also knows that Oyo was an empire, and as such, Oyo wielded a lot of political power. The might of Oyo was legendary. But no matter how political, no matter how powerful you are, you still have an origin, and we all believe that our origin is Ile-Ife. That is my own personal view. But I'm advised to both monarchs. This is not the first time it's happening. It happened before between Oba Kwadeshijo Adeolubushi II and Baba Alaafin Kubaba Yeye, Oba Lamidi Adeyemi. And at that time, all we did was to appeal to both of them to have that mutual respect, since they are from the same origin. And there should be no controversy whatsoever. At my 40th birthday, yes.
We're totally out of time. I wish we had a little more time. You know, I would certainly sit.
Another time.
Yes. We have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. I wish we had a little more time for the history in Yoruba, but we have to thank you for joining us this morning. Chief Dele Momodu is a former presidential aspirant on the platform of the NCP and also the PDP, and is now a member of the African Democratic Congress, the ADC. Thank you once more for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you, and have a nice day.
Well, what a beautiful way to end Sunrise Early this beautiful Monday morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Business Morning is at the top of the hour. I'm Ayo Makinde. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful week.